Have you ever come across a situation where you had trouble remembering what the patient said during the role play? Well, in this video, we will be looking into the common areas where most of the candidates tend to make mistakes due to poor listening in the OET speaking subtest. Hi everyone, I'm 𝗿𝗃𝗧 𝗦𝗂𝗧𝗲𝗀, an OET trainer from IILT. It's quite common to feel nervous during your test. You might be really nervous because you are actually attending the test, you are sitting in front of an interlocutor and you're talking for 5 minutes. Yes, I understand it might be really nervous for you. But due to that nervousness, you tend to make a lot of mistakes. And one of the common mistakes because of that is active listening problems. Before we get into the video, let's see what is active listening. Active listening means it is a process of listening attentively when someone else speaks, and it is a vital part of OET role plays. So let's see what are the common areas where most of the candidates tend to make mistakes due to poor listening in the role plays. Let's get started. The first and the common area where most of you tend to make a mistake due to poor listening is name of the patient. I've seen many candidates forgetting the name, what the interlocutor have told you in the role play. Sometimes before you begin the role play, during the preparation time or during the role play, the interlocutor will give you the name. And due to your nervousness, you tend to forget it. And what happens after that? You'll have a hurry-burry and a lot of tension happening during the role play because you don't remember the name. So what to do to overcome that problem? You'll have a worksheet which is given to you, right? So whenever the patient tells you the name, make sure that you write it down so that you can use it as a future reference without making the interlocutor repeat it for you. Because when you make the interlocutor repeat the name, it might cause a little bit of awkwardness in the role play because it's a name and you kind of forgot the name initially itself, which actually shows a wrong start. So we do not want that kind of a situation in your role play. So to avoid that, make a practice of writing the name on the work paper which is being provided to you so that it's easy to remember. The second common area where the candidates tend to make mistakes due to poor listening is when you try to collect information from the interlocutor. Yes. So sometimes when the interlocutor is speaking, most of the candidates have the tendency to look in their cue card and sit and read their next task. What happens when you do that? You will be missing out the relevant information what the speaker is actually speaking. So it will cause a lot of mess. Because sometimes the interlocutor will give you all the information which you really want and which you really don't want. Because sometimes the information which the interlocutor told you will be for your next task or the task after that. So what will you do at that time? You were not paying attention because you were reading your next task while the patient was talking. So what will you do? So instead of just sitting there and reading your next task, pay attention to what the interlocutor is saying. Whenever they say the information, make sure that you note it down somewhere so that when you come to that particular task, maybe the second or the third or the fourth one, you can just reconfirm it with the patient. Instead of repeatedly asking them, it will be always better if you can reconfirm it so that you can avoid the repetition and save your time. Let's look into an example. So in the initial part, when you ask the patient, how can I help you? The patient is giving you all the information there. So patient is telling why they're there, what happened to them, what are the symptoms they're experiencing, a lot of information. But at that time, some of the candidates tend to look into the next task. So what they're missing out is that whether the patient is telling you all the information beforehand or not. So what happens is when you kind of repeatedly ask the question, sometimes your second task or the third task will be to ask for the symptoms or ask about the onset or frequency. So when you come to that particular part, in reality, the patient already gave you that information. So what you will do is that since you were not paying attention there, you will tend to repeatedly ask that question again. So sometimes the patient might lash out. They will be like, I told you that already. So what happened there is that you were not paying attention. So it shows that you are not patiently listening. So in order to avoid that, make sure you listen very carefully to what the patient is saying and make notes of it too. So when you come to the second or third task where you have to ask it, you can just reconfirm it by saying, as you already mentioned, or you can say, as we discussed earlier, and then you can confirm it. That's how you can solve this problem. The third area where I have seen mostly the candidates make mistake due to this poor listening problem is when they give reassurance. Yes, when we provide suggestions or some recommendations about what the patient has to do or start to doing something or stop doing something, the patient will be listening to you And then they might ask you a question like, are you sure that if I follow your instructions, I might recover? So that is actually a question. And I have seen in most cases the candidates try to avoid that. They won't even listen to that particular question. They completely avoid and unattend that question and move to the next task. Never do that. Listen very carefully, because the interlocutor might ask you some questions in between the role play where you are supposed to give one-word answers like definitely, certainly, yes, Mr. David. So keep an eye on that. Poor listening can cause misunderstandings and assumptions. Let that not happen in your role play. For more informative videos like this, stay tuned.
IILT, it's my cup of tea.